Hi everybody. So for those that don't know me, I'm a video strategist. So that involves me helping businesses gain more visibility and relevance and revenue. So that can be all the way from helping them gain clarity in the brand positioning and marketing through to creating video campaigns that help them to sort of sustain a healthy business that grows. So I'm very excited today because this is the very first discussion in this new series that I've started of Fireside chats about accessibility and inclusion. And my favourite part about learning new things in this space is that you start to notice that accessible environments help everybody. So it's not just one of those things that's for people that are wired different or people that have disabilities. It's kind of lots of different things you don't always think of. So a good example of that is when you're at a curbside and there's like it's like lowered down for wheelchairs, but then you can use a pram on it, and you can use luggage if you've got luggage on wheels. There's like different things like that you don't always think of that makes the environments we live in more accessible. And some countries actually aren't as accessible as the UK, for example. So the topic today is Built Without Us, navigating a neurotypical world through a neurodivergent lens. So like I said before, there'll be opportunities through the session to share your experiences and perspectives on the topics we raised through the conversation. So now I'm just going to hand over to Gary to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Andy, for that intro. Really appreciate it, man. I am a neurodivergent therapist. I'm a relational coach for men and women, and also I'm a public speaker. But the key thread through all of that is, in all of those things, what I'm doing is taking seemingly broad and complex topics, and I'm doing my best to make them into one line or a few lines of truth, of reality, whatever you want to see it as. So a client of mine, a friend of mine, referred to this as distillation. That's what you're doing. You're taking like a cloud of a concept, and then you're making something tangible, something real out of it that people can grab onto. So that's why I agreed to do this, because this is, in my opinion, one of those clouds, one of those very large topics that affects everyone, whether they're neurodivergent, neurotypical, whatever. They identify as it does affect everyone. And as you said, Andy, inclusion doesn't just affect the people who are normally left out. It actually makes things better and easier for everyone as a collective society. So that's what I hope is going to bring forward in this discussion. But thank you for that intro.
Great, that's awesome. And yeah, now I'm going to pass over to Shinade, who's my virtual assistant. She's from South Africa, so I'll give it over to her now to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Shinade, and as introduced by Andy, I'm his virtual assistant, and to say the least, I'm a neurotypical virtual assistant. Andy and I, to give you a little bit of a understanding and recap of our working relationship, I think it starts off with a lot of like misconceptions that we had about how each other worked. And as someone that has worked with typical people for most of my career, I thought that like messages that were long, detailed, text-based were best. And, it's only through the understanding and the opening up about being neurodivergent and how he works best is how we came about collaborating in a healthier way. And I think the one thing I want to emphasize going forward is not only to be vulnerable and be courageous about, what you may find difficult or where your strengths lie, but also to communicate them, because without that information, I would have never had established a healthy relationship, a healthy working environment where we don't work to fit Andy into a routine, but we make the routine around him. And I hope everyone has a great time enjoying the Fireside chats, and we hope for many more.
Awesome, thanks for that. So I think it'd be nice to start off with you talking a little bit about your story, Gary, and what you've learned along the way of being autistic, and how it's been for you to try and navigate the world around you, basically.
So classic case of can't see the forest for the trees. I found out I was likely autistic when I was in my early 30s, when I had a table. We were just sitting having a meal together, a table full of my closest friends, my partner at the time, and my 3 closest friends were all there, and we're having dinner together. And then one of them just innocently said, yeah, you do things like that, Gary. You know, the way you just joke and you banter back and forth. And I said, yeah, you're quite autistic and how you do things. And I just sort of went, okay, thought nothing of it. And then the joke kept coming up again and again as part of the meal. And then eventually my partner at the time turned to me and went, yeah, I can see it. As I turned to her as if to say, that's not right. Right. And she went, yeah. She's without any hesitation whatsoever. She went, yeah, I can see that. And that was the beginning of it for me, of going down the journey of could I be? And then suddenly all of this backlog of stuff, as I'm sure many ND people have experienced, suddenly it's like you see the lines in the matrix, or you see the code in the matrix, and you go, oh, that's what was going on. So then you start struggling to make friends at school, getting into trouble for saying things that were true that you thought you were meant to say. And then it just meant you got punished in some way. Having trouble understanding hierarchies and structures, and speaking differently to one person than another based on their position in hierarchy. Never understood that. Small talk. Then you get on to dating, and I'm sure even neurotypical men would say, when you're a teenager, understanding women, if you're straight, is very difficult. Well, imagine not being able to read social cues on top of that. So there's that. And then, of course, you go into the world of work and you discover that, where you think, okay, this is a meritocracy place. You assume, like, what you learn from school is, okay, I've got my grades, I've done well, I've learned, I've studied, and now I'm at this job and I'm doing it to the best of my ability. And when there's a problem or something I don't agree with, I'm going to bring it to my manager or my boss, because that's going to make the company run better. Oh no, I got punished again. Right. Okay. So that's not how it works. Okay. And those things. So then for me, after that, I became a classical musician and a guitar teacher in schools. And then all through that, I did it for a decade. I was having the kids that were clearly ADHD. So the standard, like, typical thing of, a young boy that likes playing drums and running around all day, and he wants to play guitar as well. And I'll never forget, like, whenever I went into schools, and it was just private schools that I worked in, I would be told always, when a student had signed up with me, oh, you better watch for them. They're a problem in class. That was the term. They're a problem in class, as in they're difficult to teach in a classroom setting. And almost guaranteed, to a laughable extent, those would become like my favorite students, and my class with them would be their favorite thing. And all it was they got to come into my class, wherever it was 1-to-1. So they got my full attention. They got to discuss the things they were genuinely passionate about, and they got to speak openly and honestly about those things. That's what they enjoyed in it. And of course, I had, especially during classical music, I had clearly autistic children that loved learning all the music theory and doing all the exercises and getting everything correct and knowing what everything was called. I had all that stuff. And I got on brilliantly with all of them, not reflecting back on myself of, why is it that I seem to get on so well with these kids that the rest of the education system seems to have a problem with? Again, didn't do the pattern recognition, ironically. So it took that long of the people close to me all saying to me, all at the same time, like, yeah, you could be. And then that series of events just came into my mind like a film edited together of, here's all the parts you missed of your own life, essentially. And then once the pattern was there, then I started going down the rabbit hole of, okay, what does it actually mean to be autistic or to be neurodivergent? Then everything made sense. And that's where, accessibility, or a lack of it, made a whole load of sense to me, of not really being able, or to being made to feel welcome or like you belong anywhere, really, no matter how hard you try to fit in and understand the rules and do things the way you were taught to do them. That's when all of that made sense, and I started unpicking it for myself. And then in that journey, I then found that I could help others with it. So the best way to make meaning out of pain or suffering is help other people with it, transcend it, and find a way to help other people with it. So that's what I started doing, and I haven't looked back. So that's why now I'm a therapist, coach, and public speaker. So I'm either listening about neurodivergence and inclusion and diversity, or I'm speaking about it. And that's essentially, that's my life now. That's this decade, this chapter of my 30s. That's where it seems to be going so far. So that's where I am.
That's cool, yeah. There's definitely a lot of stuff I related to in that. One of the things that were coming up for me, talking about the trying to improve things in like working environments and like calling out bullshit kind of thing, where you're thinking this isn't working, this system's not right. Everyone doesn't seem to care like at all about the systems, or it's about, you know, working the best and having standards of work and that kind of thing. And like a lot of us autistic people really can get hyper focused on those things and like want to do our best. And I burnt myself out in those situations because I'd taken on too much work to try and keep the standards high, and then realised it's not sustainable for me to do that because the environment of everyone else isn't going to, you know, they don't care, but I do. So sometimes I'm trying to like make up for that, and then I'm realising I've burnt myself out. And also it reminded me of a friend that told me that he was working for a startup, and he got on the call. I got on a call with the CEO and was telling him that he didn't like the systems he had in place or something, or the practices he was doing. He said, "Oh, this is shit. What you're doing here, this is bullshit." And the guy was like, I think the guy tried to hear him out a little bit, but he was like, "What?" He was like, obviously, like what you were saying about the authority side of things, where he doesn't see that, he didn't see that authority so much, or he did see it, but he didn't care enough as compared to a neurotypical person did. We have that aversion to authority, and we have that sort of thinking of the bigger picture sometimes, and thinking about, well, rationally it makes sense for me to bring this up so then the company does better and the team does better. And he's thinking about the team members too, like in terms of like, oh, you're not treating them with respect, or you're not doing this, or you're not doing that. And he's saying, no, that doesn't work that way of working. I already know, because so like, as another thing is that we hyper focus on something, we learn a subject or a topic and we go deep into it. So then we become these experts in it. But then other people don't want to hear that, because then they feel insecure that they don't know that same amount, and then they're in this position above you and they're like, hey, you're not agreeing to the social rules here. And it's because we don't. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting things that were coming up in my mind there about work and how those dynamics, power dynamics, I guess.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is, man. It is power dynamics, but it's like the Fight Club thing. You know, first rule of Fight Club: don't talk about it. So the way I describe this to clients that I'm working with, especially neurodivergent clients, and usually it's the ones that have come to me that have said exactly what you just spoke about, which is, I'm signed off work, I'm super stressed with it, I'm trying to figure out my mental health and why this is all happening. And then essentially they've ended up with me trying to figure it all out. And very often it comes down to, when they go to work, they don't feel safe in that environment because they don't feel included, or that they belong in it, or that anything they do is going to be wrong or misinterpreted. So then they just isolate themselves from everyone. And then that just makes the situation worse. Or when they try to help, they do it in a way that is neurodivergent and makes sense to them. But then to the other people, they take it as a power play. And all this is it's classic projection. So what the person is doing that's taking it as a power play is they are putting themselves in your shoes and saying, if I was doing that, it would be to belittle someone else. So if I was looking at someone saying, hey, you know, the way you do that, you could really do that better by doing this, that, and the other thing, they would be doing it with an imperative behind it of, I'm showing you up as you're not as good at this thing as I am. So they are assuming that you, as a neurodivergent person, you're doing the same thing to them. You're trying to play that game with them. And what they don't understand is, no, especially with autistic people, there is no game. And with ADHD people, the overshare thing is real, is they are just saying exactly what they think unfiltered about the thing. And they're doing it in a way where they're trying to help. But if the person can't receive that, if they go, well, if it was me in that situation, I would be trying to do this, they're never going to hear what you're trying to achieve. They're only going to hear their own narrative of what they would be doing in that situation. So the way I describe this is, it's a duplicitous thing. So saying one thing and doing another. And let's say the distillation of this, the too long didn't read thing of this is, workplaces are so difficult for neurodivergent people because when you say what is honestly there, you get punished for it. But if you don't say what's there, but still play the game anyway, you get rewarded and go up through the hierarchy. So this is why I find it incredible that every day I work with neurodivergent people that are struggling at work to be fitted in and included into that. And the main reason that's happening is because they don't have a filter and they're honest. And yet I've never had someone say with a narcissistic personality disorder or a psychopathy, neuropathy within them, I've never had them coming to me going, I just don't know how to get through my job and get to the level I want to be in it. They never have a problem with it.
I think it's an interesting one because it's like there's two, I think there's also like two sides as well, because it's like sometimes people will mask and they won't share honestly as well. So like, yeah, but I'm just noticing Shinade's got a hand up, so.
Oh yeah, cool.
Pass over to Shinade.
Gary, I wanted to ask you a question as someone that was a teacher for a long time, for a while in my early career. But, you know, when you were speaking earlier about how children that are neurodivergent and so on, or when they are like claimed as like the naughty children and so on. And I've seen a lot of that where you get like your ADD or ADHD and like they're seen as naughty and disruptive and so on. And the autistic children are seen as like, excuse my French, but like smart asses because they're like, why do I have to pay attention here? Like I've already read this book. And the thing is, I want to know, do you feel like that level of acceptance that goes through school and like being like framed as like the naughty kid, like the disruptive, the troublesome one, do you think that goes into like from school to like the workplace and like that fear of like, oh, I'm not going to be accepted. I just have to work along with what is seen as the norm because of what I've experienced as a child. And that's when you're just most like easily influenced by social norms and ways of interacting with people.
Yeah. Well, the line for that I've sort of coined with many clients is you go to school, yes, to be taught things, but what actually happens is you get educated out of your own internal experience. That's what happens to most people that go to school. Public school, I mean, like a group of children all together. That's what happens. It can be different for people that are homeschooled or privately schooled. But yes, a classroom full of kids, all with different neurotypes, different backgrounds, different cultures, all thrown in like an experiment, essentially, and then trying to teach them with one way of doing things. And then the ones that can't do that or don't work well in that scenario are punished. Well, what that does is it creates a comparison effect in the children that don't get on in that situation because they look around them at their peers and they see, oh, they can just do this and I can't. So their brain is not developed or formed enough yet to be able to bring a rational conclusion from that of, oh, we're just different. Instead, they think, I am wrong. I am bad. I am faulty. I keep getting into trouble when I'm just doing my best. And these kids seem to just get it around me and I don't. I must be less or I must be worse than them. And that's what we see. So there's statistics behind that of, you know, like your average person with especially ADHD, but neurodivergence generally has heard no or to be told stop or that's enough of you, those kind of things. They've been told that 2, 3, or 4 times more often than an allistic or a neurotypical child would. So what that is constant conditioning of don't be who you are. It's not right. It's not enough. It's not correct. You need to cut that part of yourself off. And that's the whole naughty child syndrome of they will either keep rebelling because they learn, okay, this is the only way I'm seen and I get attention and I'm heard, which by the way, for a child's nervous system, if they are not seen, heard, and understood, they don't feel loved. If they don't feel loved, they think that they're going to die. Like their nervous system thinks they're going to die because if you were rejected from the tribe hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, it did mean death. So that's why children feel that way. So they feel deeply unsafe. They learn, I've got to get attention somehow. And as you were saying, for the autistic children, that's performative. I need to become really, really good at academics because then I get reward, then I get praise, then I get accepted by the tribe. for an ADHD kid that's struggling in class anyway, say they have dyslexia with that and they're struggling in school with the academics, they go, I've got to make people laugh. I've got to get attention this way. I've got to be good somehow because I don't feel good inside because of this environment. It makes me feel like I don't belong. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. So either way, both those children learn to perform as a mask in order to get attention and love and care and some form of belonging from that, because it's missing just by the way that community of kids is set up, essentially. Hope that answers the question.
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. I also wanted to open the room up as well, just in case anyone has any questions at the moment. And you can come on with audio or video, whichever, or put in the chat, whichever, and we can bring you on, basically. But if not, I've got other things.
How do you think? So I work in a youth club, and I've kind of experienced a similar thing of like the neurodivergent kids are kind of like enjoying my sessions and stuff, which I love. But then trying to like progress in the company, they're wanting me to be like more strict with things, that kind of thing. Where do you think I can be like firm but fair, like keep them having their safe space, but then still doing what I need to do to like get a promotion eventually, hopefully?
I would say, Lillian, that the best way is that if essentially that is an industry of relationships. So they will reward you if they see that your relationship with the children is universally good. It's universally strong. That will get you the reward. It's like, it's undeniable. That's the thing that's being traded there. That is how you will be judged and how good you are at that role. So if I were you, strategically speaking, I would look to get that connection with all the kids as best you can. And in terms of the strictness thing, what I found from, as I say, teaching for a decade, and I did classes as well as one-to-one work, was children are endlessly fascinated with why they do or don't do something. And especially if they're ADHD or autistic, they want to know everything, why it works, how it works, what are the functions underneath it. So if you can very succinctly and calmly to a child explain why we do or don't do something, they have a much deeper bond with you than a parent or a teacher that just says, just do that just because I tell you to. That's a position of superiority, and I'm looking down on you. So neurodivergent children will despise those kind of figures in their life that just do it because I told you to. They won't like that. If you are one of the few people that actually come down to their level calmly and quietly say, look, we do that because of this. This is why we do this way. And you let them have a discussion with you, guaranteed they'll like you better than most people in their life, because you then become a safe place. You become, oh, Lillian makes sense because when I ask her something, she takes the time to speak to me and explain to me in my language why I need to do that thing that way. So now, even if I don't agree, because she's taken the time to explain, I'll do it when she's around, essentially, because I understand she took the time to explain to me. So if I were you, I would just focus on that, and the rewards and going up the ladder will happen naturally, because then you're not having to perform to do it. You're just doing something that hopefully is authentic to you. I assume you're there because you genuinely enjoy being around the children. So then if you think about what that is, this is just autistic reverse engineering. You're there to create a connection with those kids. That is really, emotionally speaking, your job. That's what you're there to do, so that they trust you and follow your lead. So focus on the connection, and then the job stuff will happen as a result of that. That's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, thank you for that. That completely makes sense. Like not doing two different things for my managers and the kids. So yeah, I really appreciate that. Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, that's good. I think aligning those two things, yeah, it makes sense. And it's like, I think what you say, like about making it a safe space for everybody, for all the kids to like ask questions, I think is a big part of that, because then it's like not leaving anybody out, and then it's like we were saying before about making accessible environments where you understand, you start to see that not just the kids that seem to be struggling are going to ask those questions, when you actually do give them more opportunity to ask questions, or like just encourage it more, or you can say like, even share like a vulnerability of yourself and say, I don't always get things right. This is an example, something like that. Then it can encourage people to like share things more and like ask questions. And that's about creating the psychological safety. So yeah, Shinade's got her hand up again. Hello.
Hi, I just want to read a question that's in the chat, and I hope I am pronouncing everyone's name right, but Tomas. Tomas has asked the question of how much can one help a friend who does not know about anything of the topic of neurodivergence, mental health, etc., but likely have something that is negatively affecting them?
Yeah, so similarly, it's actually similar to the answer to Lillian's question is if the person isn't asking why themselves, you telling them all the information isn't going to go in. You know, you can't put water in a bucket that's closed. You know, they've got to be ready to hear what you want to say. And unfortunately, for a lot of people, they're ready to hear something when they've suffered from it enough that they now want to know what the answer is. Then they're willing to hear you out and get the solution. Then they'll bite your hand off with an opportunity to learn about the thing. But whilst it's maybe affecting other people around them, but it's not directly affecting them, it sounds maybe quite harsh or quite negative to see, but it is a pattern I see, is most people won't do something about it until it's really costing them in their life and they're consciously aware that this is a pattern that keeps happening to them. So yeah, unfortunately, we are flawed human beings that we tend to learn through the experience of pain and suffering rather than someone just telling us something of, oh, you need to do that way. We tend to need to go through the pain of it to know, again, why, just like the children, why do I need to do it that way? Why do I need to understand about this thing? Because it's difficult. It's not nice to know this about yourself. You know, there's when you go online and you see it, there tends to be a lot of negativity around it, or the down points that, you know, the drawbacks are very visible online for you to see. So it can be difficult to go into that. And also it's the thing Andy mentioned, which is on vulnerability. It is looking at yourself and admitting that there is something that is a vulnerability in you, a weakness potentially, something that you need external help with. And depending where someone is in their life, they might not be ready to accept that about themselves. The story or archetype that they have plastered over themselves is totally different than that truth or that reality underneath. And part of their avoidance of that is they just don't want to know anything about it. So they might be dismissive of the whole topic of the things we've all heard of, oh, is everyone's neurodivergent these days, and those sort of things that get bandied about. It's a dismissive thing because that person doesn't want to take that topic on board yet. It's an inconvenient truth for them that isn't affecting them personally. So they'd rather just put their head in the sand and pretend it doesn't exist. So I hope that's not what you're finding with that friend. I hope they are open to it. But the way that you tell is that you bring it up. Say you just bring up a fact about it, or I've been interested in this, I've been reading about this. Do they then go, oh, that's really interesting, tell me more about it? Or they ask a question about it, or do they go, okay, that's cool, and then they change topic? That's your answer right there. The second person is an avoidant person that doesn't want to go into that topic. The first one genuinely wants to know more about that. So act accordingly, you know.
Yeah,
That's useful.
I've got some experiences to share around that as well. So Gary will have heard of this before, about like the nice guy syndrome. It's because I actually met Gary through a men's group, so that's a topic that comes up a lot in men's work. But so like some of my experiences I'm reflecting on once I read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. It talks about what it's like to put on a bit of a show and a performance of being this nice person, like nice guy basically. So I look back on some of my experiences and reflect on with certain friends. I was trying to meet their needs and not asking for my own needs or from anyone else or whatever. And because I'd not asked for my own needs, it made me put too much energy into trying to help other people. So nice guy syndrome is very similar to people pleasing. It's kind of the same thing, and I think it stems from childhood and that stuff. But basically, like, I realised I needed to, kind of what Gary was saying, like give them space. It's like help them with your absence, I think. So you can still like raise it, like you said, and do that kind of thing. But you have to be aware, like, where am I coming from when I'm trying to help? Am I coming from a place of like, because I feel like I've not met my own needs, now I've got to put energy into this other thing to make up for it. That's what it felt like for me, like when I was helping certain friends and they weren't receiving the help. But then I had this adamance of like, I need to help you. You really need help, I can see it. But I'm not looking at my own stuff of like how much I need help. So it's a distraction from your own stuff. And I think this also ties back into what Gary mentioned before about projection and that kind of thing. It's a similar kind of dynamic, I think. It's when, like, we're talking about assuming power, like that someone's doing a power play on you or whatever else. So like you could be assuming that they want help. In that same way, someone's assuming that you're doing a power play, but then they're not seeking it. So it's like, goes back to coaching too. Like, coaching is about asking questions and checking in with someone, feeling where they're at before you offer advice and before you try and help and try and fix them in a way. Sometimes we have this feeling of like, I need to fix you. But really it's ourselves feeling a bit broken or feeling a bit uncertain of where we are maybe, or having those needs aren't met, and we're trying to compensate in that way. And I think it starts with self-awareness to try and help to move away from those patterns of the people pleasing and nice guy syndrome and notes. So yeah, those are some of the topics that I would written down as notes, and they've kind of all come together now, so it's kind of nice. The only other thing actually that came up was also about, we talked about the fear of death, and like, I think it kind of came up in terms of they feel like they're going to die when they're in a certain social situation. That's how it goes back to your evolution and like survival strategies. We have certain strategies of trying to survive unconsciously because we're just programmed to survive, obviously, and evolution's made us that way and whatever. And we fit in and trying to fit into the tribe and stuff. So being neurodivergent, that's where the masking comes in and all that sort of stuff. And maybe we could talk about masking for a little bit. Is there anything you want to share about masking, Gary?
Yeah, I can summarize it very quickly. But before going to that, I'll say generally what I've found is the whole wounded healer path, if you've heard of that, is if you are an empathetic person, you tend to naturally give to others that which you would have liked to have received yourself. So, in, say, romantic relationships, if you grew up not feeling very wanted or like you didn't belong anywhere, you'll go out of your way to make sure your romantic partner feels included and feels like they have a sense of belonging, even at expense of yourself. So projection can also be positive. So it doesn't have to just be someone's negatively projecting something on you. It's you're literally giving everyone the space, the compassion, the loyalty, the love, the care that you wish you had been given as a child or as a teenager, whatever, but you never felt. And you're projecting it out into the world in order to give everyone else it in the hope that they will give you it back rather than just giving it to yourself. And that can be a very difficult look in the mirror. That one, I've been through that one myself. And yes, that's the whole wounded healer thing of I am wounded, but I will heal and fix you thing of I will make myself feel better by fixing everyone else first before myself. But that is a neuroses unto itself of I'll fix everyone in the world, then we'll get to me. It's like, okay, I think that pattern's never gonna.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like if you never get to yourself, it's not just that, but it's also, I thought about this before and reflected on it, and it's like, if everybody thought that way, everyone's trying to help everyone else, but not themselves, then nobody would be helped.
Yes. Yeah. In terms of masking, I spoke about this in a public speech recently. So the term persona, so this is how like an average person, walking the street would understand what masking is. You could say to them, what do you call a persona? And someone would say, oh, that's someone who has like a character or a mask, or, you know, like a facade that they wear when they go outside, or when they're in front of a camera, or when they're within a group of people and all this. And it's these different masks that you wear depending on whether you're speaking to your family, or you're speaking to your friends or your peer group, or, you know, a senior, like a, you know, whatever. You change who you are based on those things. And it's called a persona because it comes from the Greek word, which was person, and that was the mask that they used in Greek plays. It's a big porcelain mask, and they used it as this grand gesture to show that this person was not to be trusted, that the person is playing an act. So it defined them from the rest of the characters in the play that were genuinely just who they were, and they're the protagonists, the people that you trust. And this usually villain was wearing this mask to say, I'm going to deceive you all. I'm going to get what I want covertly and subvert the whole thing. So the mask person was the person that people booed, almost like in a pantomime play. It's the cartoon villain that you boo is, oh, the mask and things. And that's where persona, our English word for it, actually comes from. So in terms of masking, think of it as that is you're in the play, but you're not the villain. You're trying to make everyone happy. But it's like a theater mask. Of on the outside, the theater mask looks super happy. It's like, yeah, everyone just be happy and get on and accept me and love me. And then equal and opposing opposite, just like the two theater masks, the person underneath is desperately sad and lonely because they're denying their own needs in order to try to meet everyone else's. So, you know, the guaranteed way to make yourself unhappy is to try to make everyone else happy because there's not enough of you to go around. Whereas if you just focus on making yourself happy first, people just by being around that become happier and more authentic themselves. So it's this ironic thing of, to be able to be selfless, you have to have first been selfish. Otherwise, you're just relying on other people being happy, which is by definition self-abandonment. If your concept of happiness relies on other people being happy around you, you just gifted every single one of them emotional autonomy over you. That's what you've done. And you're not in control of them. So you've just lost complete control over everything in your life, because how happy and good you feel inside is now beholden to other people.
Yeah, there's also unconscious stuff as well. Like if you're like giving them responsibility for your emotions unconsciously as well, or like you feel in your own mind, you think like it's your responsibility because I've just met your needs. So now that's the covert contracts, where we have the unconscious contracts that we make with people in our own minds. They don't see that. It's in our own head. But then they feel it. Sometimes people feel it. That it's like, yeah. So that theatre master thing, I think, is a really good way of looking at it, and it kind of goes back to like another topic of performance. Because obviously theatre, it's a performance. Mm-hmm. So I like the performative side of it. Is another interesting parallel to that. Yeah. So I think that's why I think the mask works so well, because we're putting on a performance for everybody. And I recently watched this video on Instagram of this guy that's autistic talking about taking off the mask. And some of his other videos, he was saying like, I don't want to perform. It's not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. You know. It's because nobody wants to perform. It's not you. It's like I say, it's a mask and it's a performance. So nobody wants to be not themselves. They want to be accepted for who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then as well, you get the mental health outcomes for neurodivergent people, especially, are that, you know, I'm not going to go into them, but let's just say they're not great compared to the allistic population.
So yeah, I wanted to give a little shout out to a video on the Tom Lee Films YouTube channel. There's a talk from Autisticon 2024, autism and mental health. It's got a lot of statistics in there and stuff like that, and there's an experience that somebody shares that was autistic and things, and like barriers to mental health support and that kind of thing.
Say they're not great compared to the allistic population, and I think a large part of that is having no self-concept, or a very damaged self-concept, because for survival. This isn't like a blame game of saying, oh, you're silly for masking, this is why you feel unwell and you don't feel good. It's not that at all. It was survival of not being allowed to be yourself in group environments, in social situations, and having, for survival and connection with people, to literally cut off parts of yourself to be accepted. Of course, those parts don't just go away. they get repressed within you. So for, psychology nerds, you can go into Carl Jung's work. So he did a lot of work of this, where he called it the shadow. All the parts of yourself that were deemed not good enough, either by your parents or by your peers, all the behaviors that you had that were authentic to you, that you wanted to do but weren't allowed, they don't just disappear. They get suppressed within you, and they go into your subconscious, literally underneath your conscious awareness. And what you're not aware of can control you, literally from the shadows. So all of these things come up and they present themselves as depression, as anxiety, as ruminations, as feeling not connected to life, as if nothing matters. All of these things show up later as a result of your authentic self being shut down. It's operating from the shadows, essentially, and creating these symptoms. So then if you go, well, what's the solution to that? Is, well, you need to be authentic. You need to admit to yourself first that these parts of you exist, and then bring them to the world and realize that the majority of people are not going to accept them because they didn't accept them the first time round. So most people, 9 out of 10 people are going to go, yeah, that's quite enough of you. No, I don't like that about you. But for those 1, 2 out of 10 people, they then actually know you. You actually have a connection with those people. And that is far more genuine, far more authentic than a bunch of acquaintances that rely on you playing a mask every day. So that's what I recommend to clients if they are struggling with unmasking. I say, okay, the sucky part is you're going to be alone. You're going to feel very alone when you do this. It's not going to be like a coming out party where everyone's going to be cheering you and going, yeah, well done you for taking off your mask. It's going to be crickets and a lot of rejections and people that you thought were friends abandoning you. Essentially, that's what's going to happen. But out of that death of who you were equals space for who you actually are to come forward. And I've definitely found in my own life and that of clients that I've worked with, once they do that, the people that they find that inhabit that space, that's the best connections that they've had in their life. And these people arrive organically. You don't have to force it. It just happens because it's like an energy thing. You're attracting those people to you because you're putting out a beacon of authenticity into the world, into truth, and people can feel it. So they can literally feel it when you're speaking, if what you're saying is true or not. They don't even need to know you or know anything about you. They just hear you speak and something in them goes, they're speaking the truth. I just feel it. I feel that what they're saying is not bullshit, basically. It's not masking. It's not a performance. They're actually just being themselves. And ironically, it means that you get connection in time because people come to you as a result of that. But initially, you get a whole bunch of rejection and loneliness. So you've got to go through that sort of sad, lonely, dark cave to get to the other side. So very often what we want is on the other side of that which we're not willing to do or we're fearful to do. So that's what I recommend to clients when I'm helping them with unmasking and stuff is not telling them it's all going to be roses and things, but it is worth it on the other side, basically. And what are your options otherwise? Be mentally unwell the rest of your life and have other people decide every day whether you're happy and fulfilled or not. To me, that's not even a choice.
I think you start to feel less reliant on social interaction once you've started that unmasking process as well, because even just trying to be as social as other friends is then a mask as well. Expecting yourself to have to be as social as everyone else. And like you might get people saying, oh, you should go out and get out more, you should be more social, you should do this, you should do that. And that's their own story that they're putting on themselves, but then they might not even be coping themselves. So I think this leads quite well into the embodiment stuff. So like getting out of the mind and stuff is something that's useful for everybody, but especially for neurodivergent people to not just be in our heads all the time. So like embodiment and regulating our nervous systems can have a big impact, positive impact on your health and just how you show up and like feeling yourself more. So I thought it was a good time to talk about that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, as you know, Andy, I'm sure you've teed this up for me nicely. So thank you for that. I see what you're doing. But yes, that is what I help neurodivergent people to do. That is my work, essentially. So I'm specifically a somatic therapist, which just means the body. It's using the body as therapy rather than speaking to the mind. So I'm sure, there are people listening that are in this room that maybe if they are neurodivergent, they've come across talking-based therapies and things, had them assigned to them on the NHS. There's varying reports on the effectiveness of that. I can only speak for myself. For myself, I had 3 different bouts of it for 3 different issues. And for me, it made things worse, not better. And that was because I didn't have any problems with rationalizing away feelings. If anything, that was my problem, was talking over feelings and rationalizing my way out of them and never really allowing myself to feel anything, essentially. So a CBT type exercise of being rational about your emotions was, yeah, I'm fluent. I don't need more help with this. I need help actually tolerating and feeling the emotions when they come up and being able to name them. So that's when, in my early 30s, I discovered somatic therapies. So for me, this was primarily, the main one was brain spotting, which is like EMDR therapy, if people have heard of that. And essentially, that is a very strange type of therapy that I now I'm qualified in and spend most of my days doing, which is I'm doing it now and have been through the whole call, which is as you speak and you recall things, your eyes lock in certain places. And what's happening is your brain is accessing somatic information. It's accessing senses, memories, all of that stuff to give you information about what you've been asked about. So I notice those. And as someone keeps their eyes in those positions, their body actually recalls all the information it has about that event. So they literally connect their memory or what they're saying with how their body felt at the time of that. And if you do this multiple times with a neurodivergent person, they literally develop connection or synergy between their body and their mind, rather than the two of them being disparate and separate, like 2 parents not getting on in a room. And that's where the symptoms of trauma come out. That's what emotional dysregulation is your mind is recalling something that happened or something you think might happen in the terms of anxiety, and it's not allowing or hearing what your body has to say about that. So the sensations, the emotions, the feeling in your gut, an itching on your skin, suddenly becoming hot, all of that's being ignored by the mind. And you're doing this habitually, which is what Andy was saying of living in your head. So you're only living in the logic and the facts. You're not actually living in your body. So the way to put this into an example is if you ask someone in your life, so how are you? And they go, oh, well, I did this, and then I did that. And then I remembered I had this note to take. And then, I spoke with my VA and and they just give you a list of things that happened. That's someone that isn't connected to their body. And if you can double down it, you can specifically ask them like, yeah, how did you feel like this morning when you woke up? And they'll go, oh, tired. You go, no, but like, how did you feel internally? And they can't answer the question. It's not that they're avoiding it. They cannot answer that question. And if you ask them directly, they would just say, I don't know, or I don't think about it. That's someone that is disconnected from their body. So they will become traumatized just with experiences throughout life. So my work is that I help them embody into themselves, literally ground into themselves as they're recounting stories, could be their trauma or what they're worried about, stuff in the future. And as they come into their body, they realize their body is no longer a threat as it was when they were a child. They now realize that their body is actually the only safe place that they truly have, because that's where the feeling of calmness, tranquility, being grounded, feeling good and connected in the world, that comes from you. It doesn't come from your external environment. So for neurodivergent people, that is, well, for some of them, it's life-changing because they literally learn for the first time how to safely connect with themselves. And then everything around them changes, from their job to their relationships to how they go out into the world and present themselves. Everything around them changes because it's an inside job ultimately. So that's what I do. So if people are interested, it's brain spotting, trauma release exercises, and internal family systems. Those were the 3 most useful things I used on my journey that worked for a neurodivergent person. to reconnect with my body, and it's now my working life. It's what I do with neurodivergent people. So it's an honor to be able to do that with that community of people. So yes, obviously I'm an advocate of it. I'm very biased towards it, but I would recommend for neurodivergent people or anyone listening on the call, if you haven't tried that and you do suffer with these symptoms that I've outlined of not feeling very connected to yourself and your world and the people within it, it could just change everything for you as it did for me. But I'll get off my soapbox now. Thanks, Andy, for teeing that up.
Yeah, I can acknowledge what you're saying about like therapy, talking therapy and stuff like that. And then I think when you're going through therapy, what's helped me personally going through therapy is having the self-awareness to understand the holistic view of well-being rather than just this way of looking at it where it's just the mind, it's just mental health and that's it. Mental health is one point of it, but I learnt through like having coaching as well, where I learned about embodiment and stuff. I could then bring that into the sessions of counselling to stop and think and feel. And I think by default I often am what Gary was mentioning, like how have you been today? And then I'm just like saying what I've been doing, you know, and I'm like looking at it logically or things I've done rather than how I feel. Because I think part of my autistic brain says, oh, I don't need to say that, that's just like obvious or something. I don't know, there's some part of me that thinks like it sounds too simple, I guess, in my own brain, like to say that I'm sad or I'm happy or whatever, or whatever emotion I'm feeling. I think that's what my mind tells me, is like, I don't need to say that part because that's like not nuanced enough. I want to like, and then I think my brain just overrides it and I'm just thinking about things that aren't even to do with that anymore. And I'm just thinking like, I've done this, I've done that. And yeah, so like embodiment works helped me to have that holistic view when I have counselling sessions, and I can stop. If my counsellor asks me a question or something about an experience, I can be like, stop and feel into it. What am I feeling in my body? And then is there emotions rising as I think about the experience and visualise it or whatever else. And then that's when you start talking about it again. So you're going in and out of body, emotions and the mind, rather than just looking at yourself as a person walking around with just a mind. And just locked into that, because I can easily get back into that, but then now I'm becoming more grounded and embodied to be able to stop and pause. And part of that is also I've started taking like ADHD medication for like about a year now or something. So it's a stimulant medication that helps my brain to help to regulate my nervous system a bit and clear the mind a little bit. So it's given me a little bit of a push to sort of help me in a positive way. And then yeah, that's been one part that's helped me to be more embodied, I think, and set me up for success for that. So that's definitely been a positive experience for me with ADHD medication as well. So right, so we're coming up to the end now. I'll pass it over to Shinade now.
I just thought of one last question for both Gary and Andy for you to end the video off. So social media, the day of age we live in, has made neurodivergent voices more visible. But a lot of the time it's also made it very stereotypical or stereotyped. What's one thing you wish neurotypical people could better understand about neurodivergence? Just to end off the fireside chat.
You want to go first, Gary?
I'll give you time to think.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I really wish that a neurotypical people could understand or better yet feel that understanding the way that a neurodivergent mind works and ticks would actually benefit them in their world. If they really felt that at a visceral level and understood that, there wouldn't be the separation and the arguments and discussions like this that need to happen, because they would be looking for any way to incorporate more of this type of thinking into their workplaces, into their life, into just general society. You wouldn't have to have this externalized effort to make it happen. So it goes into everything from someone with ADHD, their ability to make connections between seemingly disparate points is fantastic for creative thinking. whether that's in business or whether that's literally being an artist or being whatever, anything that requires out of the box thinking. It's why so many ADHD people become entrepreneurs, because it's like they have to. They have to create their own things because no one else could accept or follow their mind the way that it was going. So they had to come up with their own thing. So if society understood that someone with ADHD is fantastic at that kind of thinking, and instead of seeing it as a problem, thought, we need to give this person jetpacks, we need to fuel their ideas and give them runway to run these ideas out, all of society would benefit. It wouldn't just be ADHD people that would benefit. Everyone would benefit from that. And it's the same with autistic people generally. Again, I'm not putting into categories, but generally very, very good at systems thinking, about making things very efficient and optimized and organized. And the two have in common that they both really have a love of clarity, of making communication, written or in person speaking, as clear as possible so that anyone can understand it. Even if, English is their second, third language, if you're speaking to a child, or someone with developmental needs, if you spoke in a way that autistic people speak when they're speaking to each other, the whole world would become so much easier to understand and to navigate. So that's what I wish neurotypical people not only could think, but could feel. They could see for themselves that if you incorporated more neurodivergence into your world would selfishly become better. It's not just about that group and incorporating them. The whole world would improve. But, how you do that is, well, it's what discussions like this are for ultimately. So over to you, Andy.
Yeah, that's good. It's become full circle really, because it's, like I mentioned in the beginning about accessible environments and stuff it helps everybody. And I was just thinking how self-awareness is something you cultivate as a neurodivergent person as you get diagnosed and as you start to see the traits and everything. So then it's something that obviously everybody can benefit from being self-aware. So if you have conversations with neurodivergent people, they could tell you things about themselves, which then you start to see in yourself as well, because there's always going to be some traits that you share. And having that open communication to learn and become more self-aware, it helps you in your life as well as everybody else. And being able to be vulnerable and say, this is something that I do that I've noticed other people don't do, for example. And then you'll be surprised how many people say, oh yeah, I do that as well, or I know someone else that does that, or whatever, or they might share something that they do that's a bit, that they feel is unusual because they've not seen many people do it. And I think we keep a lot of things in our own minds of what we do and thinking we have to follow rules and stuff. I think also following rules is an interesting one for neurodivergent people, because on one side we like to follow rules and we really get obsessed with rules. But on the other side we can get pissed off with rules as well and we want to break the rules. So they have to be the right rules and stuff like that. But then once they're set in place and we agree with them, it's like we're very set on them and stuff like that. And yeah, so I think having those kind of conversations, I think if people would be more vulnerable themselves and sort of build their self-awareness and stuff and notice that we have self-awareness, acknowledge that, rather than looking at the downsides of being autistic or ADHD and stuff, I think that would be a positive thing for people to remember about it. So yeah, so thanks everybody for coming today. I think it's been a really interesting conversation, and yeah, we're going to have another one coming up soon, but I'm not scheduled the next one yet. But thanks to Gary for joining me, and thanks for Shinade for helping out, and it's been good to hear from Shinade about the experience we had and stuff, working together and stuff like that. So I'm glad that she shared about that today as well. So yeah, just leave it to Gary just to mention how you can follow him if you'd like to stay in touch.
Thank you very much, Andy, for having me. So I'm on LinkedIn. So if you followed that to get here, that's where to find me. That's where I'm setting up a social media presence just now. So yeah, LinkedIn, and it's just Gary D. Campbell. So Gary with one R, so Gary, D, letter D for delicious, and then Campbell, Campbell. So you'll be able to find me there.
Nice. Chef kiss.
Delicious.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say, Shinade, before we go?
I just want to say thank you to the both of you. Actually, let me put my video. Thank you for the both of you for having me here as well. And I just want to say as well to all the neurotypical people that may be working with neurodivergent people that it's nothing to fear. The only thing you fear yourself is change and change in your own routine. And it's good to start thinking out the box, and it opens you to a variety of different ways and means to communicate, work, understand other people. And I am hoping for many, many more Fireside chats.
Yeah, it was great. It was great to have you involved as well, asking questions and stuff. So that's nice to see that came up. Bina says that she really learned loads, so that's great to see her. Great to hear about that. Yeah, and I think that's everything basically. So yeah, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having us. I learned a lot as well. I really appreciate that, guys.
Great, nice one.
Thank you, everyone, for having me.